Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss One Battle After Another, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, Regina Hall, Tiana Taylor, and Chase Infinity, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Now, before I get into this, welcome back, Paul Thomas Anderson. I have reviewed his previous works, leading up before to Phantom Thread, and and then I came back for Licorice Pizza, and now I am back a third time with Paul Thomas Anderson with One Battle After Another. This was the one I was kind of most excited for, more than like Licorice Pizza, for example. But will it be as good as say, I don't know, Oppenheimer, or will it be as good as Licorice Pizza, or will it be as good as his other stuff? Let's get into the movie and find out. We open to Perfidia, played by Tiana Taylor, whom I reviewed in the Coming to America sequel. But here she's a revolutionist with a bunch of others as she spies on a camp where hostages are being taken to. And she gets to Bob where was ever Bob Ferguson, before he was ever Bob Ferguson, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, joining her in the fight in the U.S.-Mexico border along with Jungle Pussy. That's what the person's name is, Loretto. And Mae West, played by Alana Haim, who was from the last Paul Thomas Anderson film, Licorice Pizza, as they rescue hostages and trap soldiers led by Colonel Stephen J. Lockjaw, played by an actor who stole the show, in my opinion, Sean Penn. As this motherfucker is crazy, like the character Javier Bardem played in No Country for Old Men, and the Joker that was played by Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. As this is his best performance since Mystic River, in my opinion, with Stephen being attracted to Perfidia, as she steals his hat and gun while his dick is growing. I swear to God, that's what it looks like to my eyes. And they free the hostages and tie up the soldiers, including Stephen, as they escape while they're all masked up. So the soldiers, including Stephen, doesn't recognize them, but Perfidia has her mask off, as Bob and Perfidia are in love with one another, and Bob is a bomb maker of some kind, and they're in love with, and their chemistry is beautiful. And don't get me wrong, the performances by every single actor is definitely well done, but Sean Penn steals the show for me. The revolutionaries blow up building to building by planting bombs that are built by Bob, including the power plant, and Stephen creeps on Perfidia by staring at her ass like a fucking pervert of some kind until Bob comes in the picture, and we move on to Loretto and Mo smooching as May is planting an explosive in the woman's restroom, as does Perfidia, until Stephen creeps up on her and tries to kiss her as he wants to blow her. He wants her to blow the building up and meet him that very night by returning his hat and gun, and asks her to meet him at 11 p.m. that very night, and she walks away to look stressed out because they meet the night as they performed some foreplay. And not gonna lie, that's what's literally happening. And we move on to Perfidia shooting a gun while pregnant, and they celebrate while Bob and Deandra, played by Regina Hall, about does she know she's pregnant while she drinks, as Perfidia's mother doesn't believe Bob is suitable for her daughter, and Perfidia gives birth to a baby girl named Charlene, and next thing you know, she leaves her family to become the biggest revolutionaries ever, while Bob takes care of her. And the cinematography looks spectacular, as there are some great shots throughout. Stephen comes up to Bob at the grocery store, and he asks if he has a kid and if he likes African American women, and responds yes to both, as Stephen says he loves them, as he comes off like a creep that way. While Perfidia robs a bank that goes wrong, as she gets arrested and the FBI celebrate her capture, and Stephen talks with her about how much time in prison she's going to get, as she exposes everyone in her revolutionary, and even Bob and Charlene, and they move Bob being called Bob and Charlene with a new name Wyla, while Deandra helps them out as Perfidia gets herself a house because of Steven, so she can confess the names, but she chooses not to, and dies as May, Jungle Pussy, and a couple of others get killed. And the sound is great, even in the IMAX 70 millimeter when I saw that showing. And if there's any other way you could see it in the movie, 70 millimeter showing as it works in that presentation, as it was shot in VistaVision, and it was great to watch a movie in the IMAX 70 millimeter VistaVision showing, in my opinion. Stephen gets honored because of stopping the revolutionaries as Perdifia somehow disappears as the audience is led to believe she's dead despite she disappears while Stephen gets a note saying the pussy don't bop for you. And we move on to Bob's daughter, Wyla, as a teenager, played by Chase Infinity, trading karate with Sensei Sergio St. Carlos, played by Benicio del Toro, while we move on to Bob going to a parent-teacher conference at a school where Wyla goes to school at. And she gets positive feedback from her teachers, while Stephen gets a report from a Lieutenant Skinner, played by someone who saying someone wants to talk with Stephen, as he goes upstairs to his hotel room while his daughter is getting married and he's interviewed for the position of a promotion. And the script is sometimes funny in a ha-ha kind of way, but this is a very well-written screenplay, as this movie is so far well done and well made. We move on to a man named Somerville being captured in his house and taken away, which is reminding me of all the shit going on the TV as he bullshits his way into answering their questions. Until he eventually gives up their names, and the scene is absolutely fucking intense, as it works great that way, and it does take a while to get to what the trailers show the audiences what the movie is all about, but I'm still going with the movie. Stephen gets the brief of finding Bob and Wyla as Bob becomes addicted to alcohol and drugs, while Wyla is tired of taking care of Bob as he's an irresponsible parent as his own daughter takes care of him like he's his babysitter. As she asks what the fuck is wrong with him until his friends with the red car come by the house and he tells her to get a trusty machine and leaves it with her on her all the time. And Bob chats with one of Wyla's friends and they go to the dance until Deandra comes up to her in the restroom, and Deandra calmly tells her to go to the car with her as she asks if she has a phone and says no. We'll find out later, and that's bullshit. And the soldiers come to the school gym where the dance is taking place at. And the editing did take its time to get to what the plot of the movie is all about, as this is a long movie, but I'm going along with it. Bob gets a call from the code people to ask if for the code, as he's warned about Somerville telling Stephen everything, and he wants more information than what he's got. And Stephen and the soldiers try to get Bob by breaking into his house as they find a tunnel and put some gas in the tunnel, but luckily Bob gets out before it infects him, as Bob escapes it and gets to the back of the grocery store and to clean up his fence, as well as steal some sunglasses and makes a phone call to the code people, as it's been years and doesn't remember the code, like what time is it, for example. And the guy on the phone comes off like a prick because Bob is trying to give out his information but the prick constantly asks for the time and he doesn't remember. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, just get to the motherfucking point. Take all the information down at nighttime as nighttime comes, and Bob gets to Sensei Sergio's karate gym to get some guns and asks for a gun. And the production design and set decoration was tremendous in every single scene in this whole movie. The soldiers ask Wyla's friends questions about the whereabouts of Wyla, while the military looks at the karate gym for Bob, while Sensei Sergio tells Bob as they're driving to his place, Wyla has a phone when she's not allowed to have a cell phone on her, and Deandra tells her to be scared, and Sensei Sergio's neighborhood is having a protest against the military, while Bob and Sensei Sergio gets to their apartment / store, hiding Bob there, and gets everyone out of the store and takes Bob to his apartment to charge his phone in a private area. And Bob makes a call to the code people again and chats with the same exact guy that hung up on him earlier in the film and chews his ass up by calling him a prick and asks for a supervisor. And the dialogue is sometimes making me laugh as it's pretty funny. Bob eventually gets to the supervisor on the phone, and it's someone who knows Bob and asks an easier question than the asshole asking the questions before the soldiers come in, and the phone call ends with the coordinates of the location of Wyla, and gets out with a couple of Sensei Sergio's neighbors to walk him out, as Sensei Sergio gives Bob a gun, and as well as that advice which is a courage, as it's a great advice. Meanwhile, Deandra learns Wyla lied to her face, and when she asked if she had a phone, and she said no, but she really did. So that's when I called bullshit. And Bob follows the skateboard folks until he falls down to a tree and gets to the ground, and he gets tased and arrested. And I thought, damn, not only Leo fell to the tree towards the ground getting tased, while director Paul Thomas Anderson does a great job of telling the story thus far. Deandra gets to the church and introduces Wyla as the daughter of a rat, which makes her a rat. While the scene was very good in that scene, as well as this whole movie, well, we get a scene where we get an underground meeting, which they talk about how Steven got an African-American woman pregnant all these years ago. And this could have been in the editing room floor, as we'll see these characters later at the end of the film. So I wish they could have edited this scene, as it was unnecessary, which is my only nitpick is the editing. And there may be another thing in a couple of minutes I'll bring up. Wyla learns to shoot a gun, as well as fighting, while Bob bullshits his name, as he says his real name is Jim Parker, and is taken to jail as someone recognizes him. And I'm like, how the fuck did she know him in the first place? But she tells him to escape a certain way, as he sees Sensei Sergio, and they drive away while Steven finds the location of Wyla, and they get there and shoot Deandra, as she was interrogated later in the movie, but the others are dead. And I'm like, oh fuck, like the crazy motherfucker got her, and the soldiers bring her to Steven to do a DNA test. And if he's the father of Wyla, and this is the scene where Sean Penn stole the show from DiCaprio and Benicio del Toro. But don't get me wrong, they were great in this movie before, but they were robbed by Sean Penn, which has happened to DiCaprio before with Gangs in New York because of Daniel Day-Lewis. And it comes off like a shock for Benicio del Toro. Steven finds out Wyla is his daughter, and as Bob is afraid for her life, as a cop car follows behind Bob and Sensei Sergio, Sensei Sergio decides to drive quicker and drops Bob off, and they continue to follow Sensei Sergio as Bob steals a car and finds a way to get a shot at Steven, while Steven tells Wyla to get up because they're leaving, and captures her like a fucking creep he is. And Bob takes the shot, but unfortunately misses him and gets shot at, as the sound editing is tremendous, as this was reminding me of how Christopher Nolan films his movies anymore. Bob goes after Wyla as Steven has her in his car, and the device bomb finally works as he finds her based on that machine, while Steven gives a bounty assassin named Monty Wyla to kill as he reluctantly takes her. And the reason I say reluctantly is because he doesn't kill kids, as she's just a kid herself. But Monty takes her anyways, as Bob almost takes the wrong direction, but bumps into a couple of men, asking them if they've seen Steven's car, and they say it went another direction, while Wyla fights for her life, and Bob finds Steven's car, and someone random shoots Steven in the face. And we did see the guy in the meeting earlier, and that could have been in the editing room floor, shooting Steven in the face, and the bounty assassin brings Wyla to their hideout and drives away. And Steven's crash was a scary scene, but it had a nice POV to it. Bob sees the other guy that killed Steven driving another way, as Bob goes to Steven to see if he has Wyla, but he doesn't. Meanwhile, Wyla is sitting at the area where Monty, aka Red, lets her go and kills everyone in the scene, and gets himself killed as well. And Wyla escapes by car and grabs a gun, until eventually she drives away to find someone behind her, while Bob drives towards their direction and does catch up to them. As well, Wyla stops the car and hides from the hunter, as the hunter sees the car being randomly parked in the middle of the highway and crashes into her. And I thought, holy shit, this is a fucking chaos done at best as far as I'm concerned. Bob does does find the hunter dead and sees Wyla pointing a gun at him, and while she asks for the code like she did the hunter before she killed him off, and eventually she believes Bob is her father and goes with him while Steven is walking all bloodied up. And I'm thinking, this motherfucker is alive? As that felt questionable. And we get back to Steven getting the promotion while bullshitting his way to getting the promotion. And he gets it, and is an office where there is gas in the room that kills him. And they put him in the cremation room to cremate, and thank God this guy is dead. And from there, as I thought he was alive, but nope, the motherfucker is dead. And we get Bob giving a letter to Wyla from her mother, who happens to be Perfidia, as she learns her real name is Charlene. And at the end of it, she hugs him, accepting him as her father, as Bob with Wyla gets the cell phones together, and she goes on a case in Oakland by driving there. And the climax in this movie was great, as this movie is a masterpiece. But this is the second nitpick. The score to this movie was a little obnoxious. But how much of a masterpiece was it? Let's talk about it in a rating. I'll give this movie a 9.3 out of 10. The performances from Leonardo DiCaprio and Benicio del Toro are definitely well done, but the one who stole the show, in my opinion, is Sean Penn. And depending on what other great performances there are coming up later this year, so far I think he deserves the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for this performance. As this motherfucker is crazy. Like the character Javier Bardem played in No Country for Old Men, and the Joker, aka Heath Ledger from The Dark Knight. As this is Sean Penn's best performance since Mystic River, in my opinion. And the cinematography looks spectacular, as there are some great shots throughout the movie, and the sound is great in this movie. And if there's any way to see this movie, even though I'm a little late to this recording, I apologize about that. This might be gone, but IMAX 70mm but you can find it at any VistaVision 70mm, as it looks great in that format. The script is intense and sometimes pretty funny in a haha kind of way. But this is a very well-written screenplay, as this movie is well done and well made and very intense, as it works great, but the editing did take its time to get to the plot. The audience knows what it's all about, as it is a very long movie, but I'm going along with it. While it did remind me of the shit going on the TV nowadays, but the production design and set decoration is tremendous in every single scene. This is a great movie with very strong performances, and the dialogue is sometimes making me laugh, as it's pretty funny, and this is a strong recommendation for this movie. As director Paul Thomas Anderson does an amazing job at telling the story, and the score was actually kind of distracting, as that might have been the worst thing about the whole movie. And this is second best compared to Sinners, but it is on the top two of one of the two best movies I've seen all year long, as these two movies are beyond fantastic, and both came from Warner Brothers, and they're having a great year for movies thus far. But this and Sinners are the true masterpieces, as this does chaos best as far as I'm concerned, as this may be Paul Thomas Anderson's best movie yet to date. So I'd like to thank you guys for returning with me to Paul Thomas Anderson, and until when he ever makes another film, good night, everyone.